Kofi left his village for the neon lights, thinking he'd outrun a sacred blood oath. But tonight, a mysterious passenger just entered his taxi with scars that tell a story he spent years trying to forget. Is it a coincidence, or has his past finally come to collect its debt? Even at midnight, its streets pulsed like restless veins beneath glowing neon signs, sputtering traffic lights, and the distant rhythm of high-life music leaking from rooftop bars. Motorbikes weaved through crowded junctions like angry hornets. Vendors still shouted over boiling oil and roasted plantain smoke. Screens flickered from betting shops. Taxi horns cried into the humid night. And through it all, Kofi drove in silence. His yellow taxi glided through the city like a ghost carrying strangers from one destination to another. He kept his dashboard spotless. His white shirt remained perfectly ironed. His wristwatch gleamed beneath the artificial lights. To the world, Kofi was successful, a respected city driver who owned 2 taxis, lived in a tiled apartment, and spoke polished English to wealthy passengers. But behind a sharp haircut and city confidence lived a man who never looked too long into mirrors. Because mirrors remembered. Especially rearview mirrors. Rain began to fall lightly against his windshield as he stopped beside a lonely bus stop near Adam Market. Most people had already disappeared into the night, but one figure remained standing beneath a flickering street lamp. A man. Tall. Wrapped in a dark cloth despite the heat. Kofi almost drove past him. Something about the figure made the air inside the taxi suddenly colder. The man slowly raised his hand. Kofi hesitated. Then, against every warning crawling through his chest, he unlocked the door. The passenger entered quietly and shut the door behind him. The smell came first. Wet earth. Burnt herbs. And something older, something that reminded Kofi of home. Where to? Kofi asked stiffly. The man did not answer immediately. Instead, he lifted his eyes toward the rearview mirror. Kofi's breath caught. 3 long scars stretched across the stranger's face like claw marks carved by fire. Old tribal wounds. Deep. Familiar. Too familiar. Then the man finally spoke. Drive. Not in English. Not in Twi spoken by city men. But in the deep village dialect Kofi had abandoned 20 years ago. The steering wheel nearly slipped from Kofi's hands. Because no one in Kumasi spoke that dialect anymore. No one except the people from his village. No one except the dead memories he had buried beneath city lights. Many years earlier, before the neon lights, before the taxis, before the polished shoes and expensive wristwatches, there was only dust. And the village of Asempa. A small settlement hidden between forest and red clay roads where the old gods still breathed through sacred trees. Kofi had once been a boy there. Barefoot. Thin. Wild-eyed. He lived with his younger brother Kojo in a mud house beside the river. Their father had died young, leaving only stories and a family bloodline burdened by ancient obligations. In Asempa, promises were not merely spoken. They were bound. And some were bound in blood. The night before Kofi left for the city, the elders gathered beneath the ancient sekoton tree at the center of the village. Torches crackled against the darkness. Drums echoed like heartbeats from another world. Kojo was only 10 years old then. Small. Frightened. Burning with fever. The village priestess warned that a shadow followed the family bloodline, an ancestral curse that moved from one generation to another unless an elder sibling stood as protector. Kofi remembered every word. You must never abandon your brother, the priestess had said, her white-painted eyes fixed upon him. Your destiny and his life are tied together. If you prosper while he suffers, the spirits will demand balance. But Kofi was young, hungry, ambitious. He had seen pictures of Accra and Kumasi in torn magazines. Tall buildings, cars, men in suits, women with glowing skin and phones worth more than entire farms. He wanted escape. Not superstition. Not village chains. That night, before the sacred fire, Kofi cut his palm with a ceremonial blade. Kojo did the same. Their blood touched. A blood oath. An unbreakable vow. I will protect you, Kofi promised. The drums answered. The forest wind screamed. And somewhere in the darkness, the ancestors listened. But promises made by desperate boys are often forgotten by ambitious men. By sunrise, Kofi had boarded a crowded bus to the city. And he never returned. The windshield wipers scraped rhythmically against the rain as present-day Kofi tightened his grip on the steering wheel. The passenger remained silent in the back seat. But silence can be louder than shouting. Kofi stared into the rearview mirror again. Those scars. Those exact scars. His stomach twisted. Because he remembered the stories. In Asempa, when the curse found a victim, the body marked itself before death arrived. 3 wounds. Like invisible claws dragging across flesh. Kofi swallowed hard. Impossible. Kojo could not know. He refused to think it. You are from Asempa? Kofi finally asked softly. The passenger chuckled. A dry, painful sound. So now you remember your home. Kofi's pulse quickened. The man leaned forward slightly. Street lights flashed across his scarred face. You left your brother to carry your burden. Kofi's mouth went dry. The taxi suddenly felt too small. Too hot. How do you know my brother? The man ignored the question. Instead, he spoke the words Kofi feared most. The spirits do not forget broken promises. Lightning flashed across the sky. For one terrible second, Kofi saw something impossible in the mirror. The passenger's reflection was not human. It flickered between forms. Old. Young. Rotten. Bleeding. Like many faces trapped inside one body. Kofi slammed the brakes. The taxi screeched violently beside an empty roadside. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Who are you? He whispered. The passenger slowly opened the taxi door. Rain poured harder now. Then he turned back toward Kofi. And smiled sadly. I am the death you abandoned. Before Kofi could move, the man stepped into the storm and disappeared. Gone. As though the night itself had swallowed him whole. But something remained behind on the seat. A small woven bracelet. Kojo's bracelet. The very one Kofi had tied around his brother's wrist before leaving the village 20 years ago. Kofi stared at it in horror. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. His trembling fingers answered. An old woman's voice cracked through static. Kofi, his blood froze. It was the village priestess. Or what remained of her aged voice. Your brother is dying. The world around him seemed to stop breathing. He carried your oath alone, she whispered painfully. Every suffering meant for you found him instead. Kofi felt something break inside his chest. All the years. All the money. All the success. built upon another man's pain. His younger brother had paid the spiritual price for the life Kofi stole. Tears blurred his vision for the first time in years. Outside, the city glowed brighter than ever. Towers shimmered. Billboards flashed advertisements for wealth and luxury. Yet suddenly, all of it looked empty. Dead. Meaningless. Kofi looked at the GPS screen blinking beside his dashboard. His scheduled passenger pickup. His business meetings. His carefully constructed life. Then he looked at the bracelet again. And remembered a small boy standing barefoot beneath a sacred tree, trusting his older brother with his life. Kofi shut off the taximeter. For the first time in decades, he ignored the city. He turned the steering wheel toward the northern road leading out of Kumasi. Toward Asempa. Toward the darkness he had spent his entire life fleeing. The journey home felt longer than 20 years. The farther Kofi drove from the city, the weaker the neon lights became. Buildings disappeared. Asphalt turned into dusty roads. The sounds of nightlife faded into chirping insects and distant thunder. And strangely, his chest began to feel lighter. As dawn approached, mist curled above the forest paths leading into Asempa village. Kofi stopped the taxi beside the ancient cotton tree. The same tree. The same sacred ground. Only now, it looked older. Tired. Waiting. Villagers emerged silently from their homes as he stepped out. No one greeted him with joy. Only sorrow. Only knowing. The priestess approached slowly with a walking stick. Her once powerful eyes had dimmed with age. "You came at last," she murmured. Kofi could barely speak. "Where is Kojo?" The old woman pointed toward the river. Kofi ran. Past childhood memories. Past broken promises. Past the weight of his own shame. And there, beside the riverbank beneath the rising sun, sat Kojo. Thin. Scarred. Weak. But alive. The younger brother slowly lifted his eyes. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Kofi collapsed to his knees. Crying like the boy he used to be. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I abandoned you." Kojo stared quietly at the river. Then, after a long silence, he finally spoke. "You came back." 3 simple words. Yet they carried more forgiveness than Kofi deserved. The wind moved gently through the trees. And somewhere deep within the forest, the ancestors grew silent at last. Because the oath had finally been remembered. And sometimes, true success is not measured by the brightness of the city you conquer, but by the promises you are brave enough to return and keep.